Hi there, and welcome to Impact, the program that focuses on people and organizations who are making an impact in our community, in our state, and in our country. My name is Kelly, and today we're going to be joined by several different Republican candidates in our primary coming up on May 17th. One quick note, by the way, you might see some of our different candidates in the same setting, in the same chair. They're not running against each other, and they're not running on the same ticket. So we just want to make sure and let everybody know each one of these candidates is running on their own merit in their own race, and we're asking for your support as you listen to each one of them and make your own decisions. Hey, we're talking with Keith Newberry today. He's running for District 32 Senate seat. Keith, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I grew up in Southern Ohio. When I graduated high school, I joined the U.S. Navy in the Navy Nuclear Power Program, which brought me to Idaho. As a student, while I was a student here, I met my wife, Barb. When I got out of the Navy after 8 years in 1992, we moved back here from San Diego with our 3 children. So that's what brought me to Idaho.
Gotcha. So what's your background?
I was in the Navy Nuclear Power Program, a Navy nuke. When I got out of the Navy, I did some work at the Naval Reactors Facility for a number of years in radiological controls. Then I moved into the project management office doing project coordinating and scheduling and performing cost estimates and things like that for some of the work that we were performing there.
Gotcha. So what made you want to run for office?
Well, I got to tell you, in December of 2020, Governor Little declared lockdowns.
Right.
Part of those lockdowns, there were elements of the Constitution that he violated. For example, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion. Some of those things are in there. We couldn't go to church. You couldn't assemble in groups greater than 10 people. Things like that. The other thing that he did during the 2020 time period was declare essential and non-essential workers. So the big chains stayed open like Walmart, and small businesses closed. Some of those small businesses were fined when they tried to reopen because they were just losing so much revenue that they weren't going to stay in business. Some of those lockdowns included, for example, kids weren't going to school where they weren't playing sports.
Right.
My wife operates a screen printing business, and so she lost about 4 months of business during that period because there's no soccer, no baseball, those types of things. Fast forward to 2021, in September of 2021, I lost my job at the Idaho National Laboratory over COVID protocols and COVID mandates. And so, and these mandates, I believe, are illegal, especially the way they've implemented them, and considering that it's an experimental biotechnology.
Right.
So I lost my job over the mandates. During that period, I was contacting legislators, trying to get them engaged to do something. There were some that were engaged. There was a group of them that met at the Capitol building on September 15th to try to form a quorum. I think there were 15 representatives, 2 senators, and Lieutenant Governor McGeehan was there, I think was the number. So while this was occurring, I was in contact with my legislators in my district as well as some of the others and some of those that met on the Capitol. One of the legislators that I was in contact with was Senator Cook, my opponent in this race. During our discussion, he told me he was going to wait for the caucus to decide what they wanted to do.
Wow. And
that he told me that I might propose legislation in when the special session reconvened in November. Gotcha. So to me, me being the private citizen, to me, this meant that he really wasn't engaged in doing anything about this.
Right.
And then we roll into the special session in November, and I went to Boise and watched some of it.
Wow.
And what I witnessed in the special session was corruption. I mean, what I believe to be corruption. For example, you had Speaker Bedke. He was convening the Ethics Committee hearing on Priscilla Giddings, his political opponent in the lieutenant governor race. Speaker Bedke, I believe, handpicked those Ethics Committee members, and he hired the law firm that was involved, the law firm that conveniently contributes to his campaign. So that was the Ethics Committee hearing, and then some of the bills that some of the folks, the representatives, I watched the House proceedings while I was there, but some of the bills that the representatives were proposing, there was 9 of them, I think, that were pretty good bills that dealt with the mandates. Gotcha. I'm not sure what all of them dealt with, but that was kind of the focal point of most of those bills. Those 9 bills, got redirected or got directed by the Speaker to the Health and Welfare Committee. Now, the Health and Welfare Committee was there. The chair of the Health and Welfare Committee was in the Capitol at the time. But when the bills got sent to that committee, that chair was not in the session at the time. He was in the building, but he was not sitting as the chair. Yeah. And so those bills never made it out of the House during the special session. They never went to the Senate. They got shoveled off, and these were bills that would have dealt with some of these mandates. Wow. So they never made it to the Senate. So the only bill that made it out of the House during the special session to the Senate was one proposed by Representative Nate. I can't remember the details of that bill, but it never made it out of committee in the Senate.
Wow.
So, these are issues, that I witnessed along with, the other issues from 2020 through 2021. So I think that's a big reason why I'm running for the Senate. I think that people need to, the constituents, people like me want action on some of these things, and it's just not occurring.
Right. So what's the job of a District 32 senator?
Well, I mean, there's some obvious things that a District 32 senator is supposed to do. Communicate with the constituents through, there's various methods, phone calls, emails, even on social media, right. Trying to listen to those people and listen to their concerns and how those concerns fit, right, within whether it's legislation or if action needs to be taken. So there's obvious things like that that's, the senator does. But the other thing that senators and representatives do is they take an oath to support the U.S. Constitution and the Idaho State Constitution. And so I think part of the duty of a senator is to uphold that oath. And when you see unconstitutional actions by the governor, for example, there's supposed to be checks and balances. And the legislature as a whole failed to check some of that executive overreach. So how can a senator do that? Well, there's, making sure that some of the bills that make it to the Senate come out of committee. And so that, that's going to require discussion and assistance from other senators. So there's some discussions there that need to happen. There's also, issues associated with budgets and taxes and those types of things, that both the House and the Senate need to be looking at.
So what kind of experience do you feel like you bring to the table for this job?
Well, I have some project management experience. I don't have any political experience, and that's just the truth. Yeah. So I have some project management experience. I have a lot of life experience. I've, studied or read through our Constitution and some of the Federalist Papers and things like that. So I'm somewhat educated on those topics, a little. But I think the other thing that I bring to the table for this job is I'm not afraid to speak out when I see things that are wrong. Right. For example, the lockdowns and those types of things. And so I'm not afraid to speak out and talk and reach out and talk to people to try to solve those problems. Part of in project management or or even as a supervisor, at Naval Reactors facility, part of the job is problem solving,
Absolutely.
right? And figuring out how to make it through those problems and carry through and succeed.
Right. Well, and I think having heard several candidates actually describe that particular November session, for whatever reason, that particular November session seemed to really pull the curtain back on some of the mismanagement and corruption that's going on in our Capitol. And it really is seeming like we need guys with spines. We need folks that can stand up and speak out and aren't afraid of it, and they're not going to back down. And so I'm glad you brought that up as far as project management and being able to actually lead, not just be in a role of authority, but actually to take the leadership in that. So what are some ways that you feel like you could bring other people to the table and lead out in that?
Well, I mean, there's opportunities in Senate committees, for example, to gather some of those folks. And the other thing I think is in this election, this specific election, this particular election, there are quite a few primary contenders that have similar thoughts and views. Mm-hmm. And so if, part of this primary process, if we start seeing, some of those folks getting elected, now you have a group of people that can look to one another and support one another and engage this process to move some of these things along.
Right. Well, and it really is a different feel this time around. It's not the polished politicians that have, 20 years of experience that are on the ballot this time. It's our friends and our neighbors and our family members that are stepping up and saying, somebody's got to do something and I'm that somebody. And so it's been really encouraging to just kind of watch what's going on there.
I've encouraged other people. It's, it's one of those things where it's like, look, I've never run for office before. Right. And so I've tried to encourage other folks, look, we need people to run for schools. Right. We need people to run for county commissioners. I mean, for example, the county commissioners are the ones that declared the mask mandates in the county. And so the average person, my history is I go vote. Yeah. Right. And I go vote and I go vote and I go vote. And we just seem to have the same progressive track that just continues. And so I think part of the process or part of what the everyday citizen needs to do is actually get involved. Right. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be run for office. Mm-hmm. It could be supporting a campaign, attending, school board meetings, for example, things like that. Yeah. So I think people need to be a little bit more involved than at least how involved I was. I went and voted and tried to look at the issues, and I would try to look at the candidates and, okay, well, this is who I think I'm going to vote for. I think that a little bit more involvement from the community at large in various aspects of this process, I think, is important.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up the school board meeting because, there's so many people that they did head over to Boise and they observed that November session.
There was a lot of people there.
Yeah. And so they were able to see firsthand. But like my husband and I went to a school board meeting here for D93 back in the fall when they were considering mask mandates and stuff. And, we went into it during that season when our Homeland Security director was potentially calling us domestic terrorists for being parents that were wanting to be involved. And so we went in not really knowing if we were going to get arrested or not. Right. But just sitting down and listening and seeing the process, I think it makes it not as scary. And, it's a great way to kind of just dip your toe in and get a little bit of experience and a little bit of exposure so that the next time, okay, maybe I can go to the state capitol or maybe I can go to City Hall. And all of these things are things that we're invited to be a part of, but nobody ever takes advantage of that.
Are busy.
Yeah.
Their lives are busy.
Yeah.
So it's difficult when you're trying to manage, especially if you have children at home, right?
Absolutely.
It just becomes much more difficult because you got, your kids are coming home from school, they have homework, then you got, whatever it is,
Sports.
soccer practice, sports,
Exactly.
or band, or whatever those things are. And so people are really busy with that kind of stuff, and it makes it difficult to do.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the things that career politicians have banked on, is that we're busy with good, important things, and we don't have time to look over their shoulder and suspect them of wrongdoing. And so they've gotten away with all sorts of criminal activity for years because we've all been busy raising our kids and going to soccer and
there's a lot of that, I think.
volunteering at church and stuff. And that's what they're counting on. And now it's time for good people to do something. And I don't remember who originally said it, but the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing.
To do nothing, yeah.
And guess what? They're starting to stand up.
It's a good thing to see.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to see. I went to a school board meeting. Oh my gosh, it was Alturas Academy. Is it Alturas Charter? I can't remember the exact name of it.
Yeah.
But I went to one. They were having a school board meeting, and there was some parents that are protesting, and they had their signs, "Stop masks," and I mean there were probably, I'm guessing, 100 parents there. Yeah. Right, protesting the mask mandates that Alturas had adopted, and they have the school board has the open session where people are invited to, listen in and attend. And then they have the closed door session. I can't remember exactly what that's for, but they had a closed door session. But before that, they had the open, it's open to the public. Right. But one of the things they didn't do was let any of the public speak.
Wow.
It was like they were getting ready to adjourn. And I finally stood up and said, "Are you going to let any of these parents speak? I mean, look at all these people that are gathered here to talk with you." Yeah. Right? And they're like, they said, nope, they had their opportunity to speak on this before, and we voted on it. And they kicked everybody out, and they shut the doors. Wow. I was just like, I can't believe that, you got all these people here. Wow. Now they have, obviously, when you have meetings like that, you need to control certain pieces of it, right? Yeah, there's protocols. There are protocols, right? But when you have that many people gathered, and I don't know, but I'm sure they had a spokesperson, right, that wanted to speak to them, and they didn't let them speak. This just reminded me. I'm pointing my finger at you. Sorry. Just reminded me. On September 15th last year, when those folks were gathering at the Capitol, Ammon City Hall was the Capitol for the day. Wow. Okay, so Governor Little was there. And we were gathered over there. I bet there were, 300 or 400 people gathered. Wow. And, stop medical mandates. Yeah. And we were protesting over there. He did not address us. You could go sit in and watch the proceedings for the day. There was limited seating, so not everybody could go in and watch them, right? But we were gathered there on the lawn, and we had our protest signs and things like that. And he never addressed us, And it just seems to me that you have all those people gathered. They're concerned, and they're asking our governor for some support to support their freedoms. Yeah. And he would not address that at all. Matter of fact, when he left for lunch, he went out the back door, and they drove off for lunch, he and his security detail. Yeah. And when they came back from lunch, they parked over in the firehouse parking lot. Nobody saw them pull in, and they walked across the grass and came back through the back door. Wow. So it's just one of those things that, I think he could have, even if he came out and said, "I don't agree with you." Exactly. Right? Yeah. I see that you're here. Yeah. But there was nothing. He didn't acknowledge any of those people.
Well, and that almost seems like something that we've lost in our country is just the ability to have a civil conversation. Whether you agree or not isn't that's part of the point, but just giving the respect of hearing both sides of the story and hearing each other out seems to be something that has been lost in a lot of today's politicians. And, that's just kind of one more example of that there. But so what are some things that you're learning through this process?
It takes money to run a campaign. I'm learning that. It's hard. I'm busy. I'm going to school right now, and trying to get establish a footprint that I'm actually running. It's difficult, and it does cost money. Not everything, but there's some things that you have to do, and so it's difficult. I'm learning that I don't want to read comments when there's a story posted.
Yeah.
But I can't be that sensitive. So it's just one of those things that I have to come through because, those people, many of those people are going to be constituents. If I win in my district, I need to listen to those people.
Yeah.
So, but it's just one of those things, Facebook or whatever it is. You read comments and, and a lot of times people aren't necessarily as kind when they're writing something as when they're speaking to you face to face.
Yeah.
And so, it's just, it's one of those things that I'm seeing. And, it's, I don't know, it's a little different because I'm not a public figure, right? Or I never have been. And so, that's one of those things that I'm looking at. It's like, wow, okay, I'm going to have to navigate that process to the best of my ability. Other things, wow. There's just thinking about, okay, let's say I win the primary, right? And then I have to go on to this November election. I mean, there's going to be a big learning process there, just familiarizing myself with the Senate rules and things like that, because it's, they have protocols on how they operate. And so there's things that I hadn't considered before that now I have to consider. So there's things like that I'm learning.
And I think touching on the human side of it, that, hey, I'm not a public figure. I'm a neighbor. I'm a horseman. I'm all these things. And now people are taking pot shots at me. And, I think for years, that's been one of the things that has kept good people out of politics is the opposition can get so messy and so mean that people just don't want to have to put up with that. They don't want to drag their family into that.
It makes it hard.
Yeah. So has it been something that your kids have had to deal with too, or?
No, I don't have enough notoriety yet for that to occur.
Good.
So no, that none of that has happened.
Good.
It's I'm just looking at just a few comments based on one story.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's just something that all of a sudden it's like, wow, I need to think about that.
Yeah.
Right?
That's yeah. So how did that conversation go with you and your wife when you said, hey, I think I need to throw my hat in the ring?
I think it's a conversation that evolved.
Good.
It just didn't happen. That
you didn't make the decision.
Well, I'm running for Idaho State Senate.
Yeah.
Right. No, it was a process. It was a process of all the last 2 years.
Right.
And so realizing that our Senate, in my mind, in my opinion, is progressive and liberal, and for the most part, and most of them are Republicans.
Yeah.
And I don't see them behaving that way. And then you look at the things that our governor has done that are unconstitutional. I mean, there's just a multitude of things, including a greater than a 60-day state of emergency, for example. And so, her losing her 4 months of income, that was a big impact to our household.
Yeah.
Right. And then me losing my job. So those things It wasn't an overnight, one day I woke up and said, I'm doing this. It was kind of a progression where I guess we decided that this is what we should do or, participate in.
Wow. So what would you say to someone who maybe is looking at your campaign and 2 years down the road, they're thinking, well, maybe I should throw my hat in the ring to run for something, county dog catcher or whatever. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give them?
Get started early. I was considering running back in December. We had talked about it in November, actually, when a group of us met at the state capitol for the special session. It was only a couple of days. But there was a group of us that met there, and these were part of the discussions that we were having because what we were witnessing was like, we have to do something about this. And so what do you do? Yeah. Right? And so that was part of that process, was going to the Capitol and witnessing some of these things that's, we just didn't like what we saw. So I would have started earlier, but they were doing redistricting.
Wow.
Right? So the redistricting impacted that decision or the announcement of that decision. There are things I could have done to prepare had I decided that, no, I'm not running. Right? The reason for not running would have been, well, what district am I in? Who am I running against? Is that somebody I really want to run against, or is that somebody I want to support?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. And so those were factors that delayed that decision or, declaring my candidacy with the Secretary of State. There were other things that I could have done to start preparing for a run. And now 2020 hindsight says some of those things I should have started those, even if it was like an exploratory type of campaign, right? So funding, different things.
Gotcha.
But there's also sunshine laws associated with campaign funding, and I don't completely understand all those. So I would have had to study some of that stuff and to prepare for, campaign finances, for example.
Gotcha. Okay. So
my advice would be, sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
You're answering your question, is if anyone's thinking about it, discuss it with your spouse, and prepare early. Okay. Prepare early, because there's a lot of things to think about.
Gotcha.
A lot of things.
So some of that preparation is just learning the process and the laws associated with it, or what other kind of preparations would you recommend?
Well, I don't have a campaign team.
Okay.
Right. It's my wife and I are my campaign team. Now, her sister has agreed to be my treasurer. So there's things like that. You need help.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
You need help with flyer design. I designed my own, right? And so preparing those types of things, just little details like flyer design, contracting signs and figuring out what the cost, figuring out what your budget is and what you need to run. So having a team to help you, whether it's just friends, it could be somebody that's experienced in campaigning, or, relatives, your children, whatever that is, and enlisting the help of some of those people to get it off the ground. Because there are a lot of things that you have to do. I mean, there's setting up Facebook ads, right? Which is difficult to do these days, right? Because the way Facebook has restructured,
right?
Or Instagram, which is still part of Facebook. Yeah. So figuring out, okay, how am I going to take campaign donations, for example? If you're doing an online donation, I originally tried to set up a PayPal account for donations, and I had a heck of a time getting through PayPal. Finally, I decided to use WinRed because that's what some of the other people were using, and it was simple to set that up. But understanding those roadblocks and how to get financing, launching a web page. My son-in-law put together my web page for me. It's just a face and a donate button for now. So I'm hoping to add some content to that webpage.
Cool.
Some 30-second video clips or things like that.
Yeah.
To try to engage people.
Good. Well, and I think there's a whole slew of candidates right now that you're trailblazing, and you're kind of building a roadmap for those candidates that are going to be coming behind you, and potholes to avoid, and hey, don't use PayPal, use WinRed, stuff like that, where you can mentor some of those other candidates that are going to be coming behind you as well. So, what's a message that you have to your audience right now?
Well, I think there's a lot of issues in Idaho, right? I think that obviously we're starting to see inflation issues. We're seeing rising gas prices. The state legislature can't do much about that. They could decrease taxes and provide a tax break, an immediate tax relief, so that there's more money in somebody's pocket as grocery prices go up and as gasoline prices go up. So there are a lot of issues there. I think that some of those issues could be solved if we had a legislature that really was not playing gamesmanship with bills. Right. There's a lot of gamesmanship going on in the Senate and in the House with bills. So we need to put good people in there that will knock that stuff off. Then I think some of the other issues that we see, whether it's critical race theory, for example, being enacted in schools,
right.
There's a lot of issues that people feel very strongly about. But I think it's difficult to deal with those issues with the legislature that's playing games.
Absolutely.
Not all of them are. We actually have some good legislators.
That's good.
Okay, we do have some good ones. But there are some that aren't so good. So I think we need to clean house, both of them, the Senate and the House.
Yeah.
So
vote them out.
Vote them out.
Yeah. Primaries coming up May 17th. For registered Republicans, if you are unaffiliated or haven't registered as a Republican, get registered. We're trying to figure out if it's available all the way through the day of May 17th, or if you need to be registered ahead of time. But there's been some conflicting stuff on that. But yeah, get out and vote. That's one of the biggest things. This is one of the most important primaries that Idaho has ever had, and I'm not going to say in all of history, but it's an important primary. I
think it's an important primary because we're accepting the status quo, or we're trying to make real changes.
Absolutely.
So I think that's why it's an important primary in Idaho right now.
Absolutely. How can folks reach out to you? Website or help out with your campaign as well?
My website is keithnewberryforidaho.com. Okay. And so you can go right to that webpage. Or I'm on Facebook at Keith Newberry for Idaho on Facebook. So those are two places that folks can reach out to me. And my phone number's listed on my flyer, so you can always call me too.
Sounds good.
And it's right there on the webpage.
What do you need help with? Well, finances, obviously.
Well, yeah, there's it's one of those things that I don't want to go ask people for money.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And you don't want to.
Yeah.
But it's something that's needed. Definitely. I'm trying to get signs done, right, for my campaign, and that costs money. Yeah. And so the other thing that is a help to any, not just me, but any of these conservative candidates, right, around here is they're doing walking neighborhoods, right, and handing out flyers and talking with people. And so that's kind of an important thing to walk these neighborhoods. Here's the people that are running, and here are the folks that I'm supporting. I like these people. This is why I'm supporting them. So those types of actions are pretty awesome. A way to get involved for people to get involved if they want to get involved.
Good to know. Keith, anything else you want to share with our audience today?
Yeah, vote for me on May 17th.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Our Republican primary is coming up May 17th, so be sure and be registered as a Republican before then. The views expressed by our guests may or may not express all of the views of the host, Flying Maverick Media, or Stand Up for Idaho. Thanks so much for tuning in.